Today, we're talking about a concept that we see arise in United States history over and over again, right up until present day, and that is something called nativism. What is nativism? Well, let's just take a look at this basic definition here on the screen. It says the idea of preserving status for established inhabitants of a nation over newcomers or immigrants. Nativism has become a general term for opposition to immigration based on fears that the immigrants will distort or spoil existing cultural values. All right, there's a lot to digest there. In the simplest terms, nativism is this idea that you are preserving the nation for the native inhabitants of that nation, the people who were born here, which in a country like the United States, a bit awkward since this is a country of immigrants. And typically the people who are perpetuating nativism, in fact, would have had nativism directed at their ancestors at different points in the past in U.S. history. Nativism has reared its head over and over again in American history. It's just that the targets of nativism have been different immigrant groups over time. So as we move forward here, there's a definition from a textbook that was written several years ago. I mean, this is probably 15 years old, a textbook I have used with my students in the past. And again, it says that nativists felt immigrants threaten the future of native-born U.S. citizens. And then word for word in this textbook, it says some nativists accused immigrants of taking jobs from real Americans, and they were angry that immigrants would work for lower wages. Others accused immigrants of bringing crime and disease to American cities. Immigrants who lived in city slums were likely targets. So I don't think that you would have to rack your brain too much to think about times in recent American history. I'm recording this in 2023, where you have probably heard similar language directed at different immigrant groups here in the United States. Again, saying that whatever immigrant group are not real Americans or that they are bringing crime and disease. This has happened over and over again in American history, unfortunately, in a country built on immigration. So is nativism still a problem? I'll leave it up to you to decide. You'll just have to think about, have you seen nativism in your own life? Have you seen it in the media? Do you view that as a negative? That's to your own personal opinion, but I will tell you that typically in American history, nativism has been a large negative. It has resulted in cruel things happening, like the Japanese internment camps in World War II. We have seen nativism directed at Chinese immigrants, resulting in the Chinese Exclusion Act in the later part of the 19th century. And certainly, we've seen it here in the 21st century as well. I very much like this cartoon that was published in Puck magazine many, many years ago. And as you see, it is a perfect illustration of the negatives of nativism as well as how hypocritical it is for immigrant ancestors here in the United States to perpetuate nativism. So in this cartoon, you see what looks to be a European immigrant arriving at the docks, probably in New York City, and you see some very wealthy businessmen who are telling him, keep out. You got to leave. They got their hands out, right? Well, the irony being pointed out here is that the ancestors of these men, the people you see in the shadows, were once immigrants just like the man arriving at the dock, and they were allowed to come in to this country with all this freedom, democracy, capitalism, which allowed them to rise above, to achieve great personal wealth and become a success. And so even though they had that opportunity, they're telling this immigrant, no, you can't come in. And you know, this is during a time in the 1800s when, as it relates to immigration laws, there basically were none. It was, you just come on in, you show up, you come into the United States. And today the immigration system is much more complicated. But in the 1800s, unless you were Chinese Exclusion Act, that's a topic for a different video, you pretty much just had to show up and you gained access to the United States. So doing it the right way as an immigrant back then was much easier than it is today. And still, people were opposing immigration and saying, you can't come in. So that's what nativism is. It is a general fear of immigrants, people believing that immigrants are going to change their country too much and them not liking that, so pushing back against immigration. If this video helped you out, I would greatly appreciate you clicking that like button, subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you next time here on Mr. Droste History. Take care.